Tonight, despite assurances from government that all the necessary security measures have been taken to ensure the safety of Ghanaians, the release of two Yemeni hardcore Al-Qaeda activists into Ghana is raising critical questions across the globe.
To be at least a medium risk to U.S. national security.
When, now or then?
In 2007. But here's the key thing about them. They both attended something called the Al Farouk training camp in Afghanistan. This is no camp for Boy Scouts. They trained 4 of the 9/11 hijackers. So this is a hardcore Al-Qaeda training camp, and they were picked up by the United States just after the 9/11 attack.
Under international and local laws, what would be the status of these Guantanamo detainees during their stay in Ghana? What legal grounds are there to place restrictions on them while here? Are they refugees? Are they migrants? Was there a payoff for Ghana to enable these detainees to be released into our midst? If the U.S. cannot keep them, on what basis was Ghana classified as safe and secured enough to receive them? This is today's big story with me, Stephen Enti. A statement issued by the U.S. Embassy in Accra today, January 7, about the transfer of 2 hardcore Al-Qaeda Guantanamo detainees to Ghana shocked the core of Ghanaian citizens. And part of the statement says, and I quote, "The United States is grateful to the government of Ghana for its humanitarian gesture and willingness to support ongoing U.S. efforts to close the Guantanamo Bay detention facility. The United States coordinated with the government of Ghana to ensure these transfers took place consistent with appropriate security and humane treatment measures," unquote. Now, U.S. media have been questioning the basis for this transfer, especially when these two, Mahmoud Umar Mohammed bin Atef and Khalid Mahmoud Salid al-Dube, are classified as hardcore Al-Qaeda militants. Fox News in the United States has been analyzing the development, and the arguments point to the fact that the U.S. has been wrong before. Could they have been wrong again?
Developing right now, 17 Gitmo detainees about to be getting out, transferred to other nations. Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Carriage is here. Nice to see you, Catherine. Where are these 17 going?
Well, what we know, Greta, is that this list of 17 is on a very close hold because the White House does not want any leaks, because what we understand is that the group does contain multiple bad actors as well as Al-Qaeda followers, and they don't want anything to either delay or ultimately derail this biggest transfer.
All right, I take it that the ones that are being released now are more hardened than the 5 we left. We released, for instance, to Qatar, right?
No, I wouldn't say they're more hardened than the Taliban 5 who are in Qatar, but what I would say is that they're kind of like the coffee grounds at the bottom of your percolator. I mean, we're getting right down to the very end, and this is why these groups are so difficult to get rid of, because the countries that take them will only take them, I understand, in this particular case, in onesies and twosies.
All right, we did some sort of deal, I assume, to these onesies and twosies, countries taking them. Do we know anything about the deals, or is that secret?
That is also secret, but what I would say is that the White House has really prided itself on being better at vetting than the Bush administration, but they've got a lot of heartburn over a recent transfer in 2012 now, this guy Ibrahim al-Kozi. He's now gone on to be one of the key players in Al-Qaeda in Yemen, which is the most active and capable of hitting the United States. So they can no longer say we're much better at betting than the Bush administration, because this is a real high-profile return for them.
All right. Current Secretary of Defense has to sign off on this.
That's correct.
He was more willing than, for instance, the last 2 Secretary of Defense. Is that right?
Yeah, Secretary Panetta and also Secretary Hagel, once they resigned from those positions, confirmed that they had a lot of difficulty and reluctance to sign off on these transfers because the Secretary of Defense has to certify that they are no longer a security risk.
Right. The latest on this, Fox News reports suggests that the U.S. may have been wrong in this one, because it has been wrong in the past. We'll be bringing you that analysis subsequently. But Irbad Ibrahim is an international relations and security analyst. He's joining us via telephone now. Irbad, good evening, and thanks for joining us on today's big story.
Good evening.
Steve, and thanks for having me.
So, Irbad, you feel that we're making a lot of fuss about these two Yemenis who are to be released. Actually, they are to be shipped into Ghana to live with us. We are not sure upon which status they will be here legally, whether they will be detainees, whether they will be refugees, or whether they will actually go over their normal lives, and what time frames they're expected to stay here. So all of these questions are bugging our mind. And you think we shouldn't worry?
We shouldn't worry at all. And I think the Ghanaians are making a storm out of a teacup. And Steve, you are quite a muscular guy. I'm sure if they disarmed these two people and kept them and you and me in one complex, I believe we can stop them from getting out. This is a deja vu for us. During the Liberian crisis and civil war, we created Bujumbura camp, and over 40,000 people came to Ghana. Nothing happened. They couldn't tinker with the national security.
But we're talking about former Al-Qaeda trainees who have received hardcore military training through Al-Qaeda wings by which they were picked up by the U.S. I mean, this has nothing to do with Bujumbura and the kind of refugees that come in through Bujumbura.
If it doesn't change anything, you could disarm Rambo and bring him to Ghana, and we'll be able to deal with him. These are people that have got training. I don't think they are even top tier.
You're making it very simplistic, Irbad.
Yeah, look, Steve, you know, the most dangerous detainee in Gitmo is called KSM, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who is accused of being the mastermind behind the September 11 attack. These are close to obscure figures within the ranks of Taliban and Al-Qaeda. So therefore, I don't think we should make a fuss out of this. And this is just to consolidate the bilateral ties that bind Ghana and the United States. It's a stopgap measure. You know of the DDR approach of disarmament, demobilization, and rehabilitation. The Americans have thoroughly disarmed these people. They've demobilized them because they are on the run wherever the Americans are fighting them. But because the American judicial system has got its own, extradition laws, they would want to take them abroad, and this is not an open-ended engagement. But
there are those who will suggest that if U.S., the whole United States, could not contain these two detainees, how certain are we that if they come into Ghana, we can contain them? I mean, within our security parameters, whether we have the capacity to handle ex-Guantanamo Bay detainees.
Steve, I think this will be done in concert with the Americans. If the international press didn't cover this, these guys would be in a safe house somewhere in Ghana, and you and I wouldn't have had any whiff of what was happening. Let's not exaggerate the facts on the ground. I'm a bit surprised. I don't know whether I'm sleeping. Someone needs to poke me to get me up. But I don't think this is any extraordinary thing.
Right.
The extradition of prisoners takes place around the world, no matter how sophisticated the training they had during their active days with Al-Qaeda or the Taliban. And according to the communique that was issued, they've not been found culpable of carrying out any suicide bombings or booby-trapping trucks and all that. So therefore, Ghanaians should accept this. It's a foreign policy.
But Irbad, why are they not being shipped to Yemen, their home country, and they're ending up here in Ghana, West Africa?
See, Yemen is at war, and the Houthis and the Saudis are fighting in Yemen. There's open warfare in Yemen currently. And those countries that took them initially in the Middle East did not take good care of them, so some of them ended up joining the insurgency. In Jordan, a few were released. In Morocco, a few were released. Algeria and all these countries are absorbing some of these ex-Gitmo detainees. So therefore, I think in a situation where a detainee country is quite stable, well, there are Americans that have actually trained with the Taliban, Adam Gaddan and a host of others. Where America didn't take fit to take them back into the American jurisdiction, they've done. The Brits who have joined the Taliban and have been detained at Gitmo, many of them were taken back to Great Britain. But these are Yemenis. Yemen is not stable. So in the meantime, a country that is seen as a bastion of stability, that could be helpful in the rehabilitation process. And like Ghana could play host to these people. They don't mean anything. I believe there are more dangerous detainees in custody at Ankafo than these two guys.
Interesting.
So therefore, I believe Ghana should not lose sight of its humanity. When the international community calls on us, we should stand ready because we don't live in isolation. If today Rwandans are marooned and they need assistance and we are shutting our doors to them, who knows? Next time, Ghanaians may end up refugees in another man's land. So let's be quite careful about this issue. It's a foreign policy decision, and I believe it's been taken in the right direction.
Right. Irbad, I'll have you hold briefly. Security expert Emmanuel Soate is also joining in the discussion. Mr. Soate, it's nice to have you here. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's a pleasure having me on your program. Good evening to you. Good evening to your viewers and listeners.
Good evening. Now, Irbad is suggesting that this is really, we're creating a storm in a teacup and that these two, I mean, you and I could easily muscle them out if perhaps we met them on the streets because they're harmless. Is that how you analyze it?
Who made that statement, please?
Irbad Ibrahim. His analysis points to the fact that these are detainees who are harmless and might not even affect our national security, considering that they've been cleared of all offenses.
Okay, normally it's not professional to criticize somebody like that, so I'm not responding directly to what you are saying.
That's fine. Yeah, I agree perfectly.
Okay, so for me, you see, what happens with what I've stated with these extremists is that two things. First of all, your most vital national security asset and interest should be your people. It's not the minerals, it's not the gold, it's not the oil, it's the people. Now, part of the security discourse is also like this. We are not only talking about physical safety and security, but we are talking about the psychological state of your people. So, for example, there's a law of causing fear and panic. Okay, that means that fear and panic may not actually be there, but you might create, your action or your inaction will precipitate certain conditions, and those conditions may be groundswell for other security imperatives. So if the ordinary Ghanaian has concern, if the ordinary Ghanaian who is part of the global village has concern, watches television, sees some of these extremists, hears what American governors say, the president say, the American public say in relation to Guantanamo Bay. I'm specifically relating to Guantanamo Bay, not Syria. I'll come to Syria and I'll come to the ICC. If people listen to such discourse, when I say people, Ghanaians in the diaspora, Ghanaians here, they listen. They know position countries take. And they have some level of discomfort. I think that the state should respond to that issue. The other one has to do with the question of what is our vital national security interest in this? Because you see, when you run through history, every country would put its national security interest first. So America bringing this package, it's a package. I don't believe what Weber would say that it is there for humanitarian purpose. I don't believe that. It's a package. Now that package, you have to look at that package and say that, okay, given this package, this is our vital national security interest, and we consider the immediate and the short-term interest as against the long-term and realize that we are uniquely positioned to harness the best out of it. And I think that has not been done. Why am I saying that? Because you see, the way it was being released, for me, I keep using the word ambush. It comes across like an ambush. I use ambush here coterminously with surprise. And I think that such an issue should have gone through Parliament, even if the law does not demand that. Why? Because you want to build a multi-party consensus. You want to use channels of Parliament to meet their constituents. And, of course, also have press conferences before. But when it comes in like an ambush, it means it's something surreptitiously being done, and then you are just trying to do some damage control because you think that international media will pick it up. And I think
so Mr. Soate, the government is not telling us what our national security interest in this is. But if you were to speculate or perhaps think around possible areas of national security interest, can you think about anything?
You see, sometimes smaller countries struggle to, negotiate on the same footing with big countries like America. So sometimes they take decisions that really they wouldn't want to take. And I'll give you an example. Do you remember that there were some monkeys being brought some time ago? Monkeys that had been used for experiment, and they wanted to bring them to, I think, in Guantanamo region. And people stood against it. Remember the military base. Now, I think that this one, given the timing, given our financial crisis, given the plummeting cost of fuel, I'm talking about petrol products, given that the country is struggling to stabilize, given that we also need to be seen to be part of the international community and have the goodwill of America. And once you have that goodwill, there are other things that you can say and you cannot say. These are the benefits. I think that those are some of the things that might have informed the government. I don't believe, when it comes to the humanitarian, I believe that will be about 2% of the whole discourse. I think there's much more to that. And it is up to the government to prove me wrong. It is up to them to tell us our vital national security interest. Because you see, there is no way America would put Ghana's national security interest ahead of America.
That's right.
America cannot do that. Britain will not do that. France will not do that. Germany will not do that. It is up to us to say, in these areas, our vital national security interests converge, and we have consensus. But these areas, we think that for the immediate and short term, repeating myself, the ordinary Ghanaian who is the best asset may not be comfortable. When I say Ghanaians, Ghanaians in Ghana and Ghanaians in the diaspora, including security and intelligence people, they will tell you they are not comfortable. Why? Because, see, you don't want to move because a number of countries are on the terrorist list. But what happens is that there are various gradations. You have 1, 2, 3, some are 30, some are 50. You don't want to quickly project yourself from maybe 30 to 1 by any action or an inaction. How do you do that? Sometimes having unnecessary media attention. I'm talking about international media attention. Because you don't have the resources.
So you think that this is the kind of situation that is likely to cast a negative light on our country and especially the state of our national security under the circumstance?
Yes, the people are the national security. So it will bring us unnecessarily to the focus, sustained focus of some people we don't want to attract. I think that, yes, it's a very great possibility.
Right. Mr. Swate, we're grateful for your time on today's big story. It's been wonderful speaking to you. Emmanuel Swate is a security expert speaking on the matter. Irbad Ibrahim is still on the line. Irbad, I'll give you just a few seconds to quickly respond to some of the issues that Mr. Swate has brought out, including the fact that in such negotiations, Ghana should have put its national security interests at the fore. In this instance, do you think of anything which could have been the leading national security concern or interest we considered before agreeing?
And Steve, just as I checked just a little bit on Asempa earlier with Dr. Swate and Dr. Vladimir Tridan, so these are experienced hands in their various areas. But let's not be flippant about this. I defer to them. They are actually folks with much more experience in this arena. But as you asked the other question, what has Ghana's national security stand to lose that we've sought to consolidate our bilateral ties with the United States?
So you are looking at this only in terms of bilateral ties. I mean, what about national security interests? I mean, that's the critical issue, isn't it?
Steve, all of us can be Pan-Africanists and take intransigent and entrenched positions. But when you deploy your oil in Ghana and refine it in Ghana and use it as petroleum finished product, you'll take them to much more developed countries. This issue of equity, let's put Africanism first. If we were this independent, we would be able to do things on our own. When the U.S. needs this, the whole world catches cold.
So this is about economics also, from the argument you're posturing.
Look, Steve, nobody has been able to convince us in the past 48 hours or so what negative thing we stand to suffer as a result of taking this decision. These are classified, clandestine pieces of information. On a good day, national security would not have had the, wouldn't have been under any obligation to even inform us. You know any other drug cartels whose operatives have been arrested in Ghana? Steve, let's face reality. This was a decision we had to take. It's an opportunity for us in the next 2 years to interact with the CIA and get of the art experience in manning our entry points, our borders that are quite porous. We should be humble enough to learn from our sophisticated intelligence agencies. Let's not pretend Ghana is all okay and all that. Then manufacture your weapons, manufacture your Humvees, manufacture your RPGs. If you don't go to the American system.
Right, Ibrahim, thanks very much for your time on today's big story. Checks with Parliament's Defence and Interior Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committees all indicate the issue has not been discussed by any of these committees. So how was the deal brokered? Is this really a humanitarian gesture as claimed by the U.S. Department of State and corroborated by Ghana's government? In its press release, senior research fellow at the Legon Center for International Relations and Diplomacy, Dr. Yao Gebe is joining us on the line now. Dr. Gebe, good evening, and thanks for your time.
You're welcome.
Now, we're talking about this from a different angle. Our security experts have said, one has said that we need the bilateral tie with the United States, and for that matter, going to such an agreement to receive these two Yemeni Guantanamo detainees is not only good for Ghana, but on a humanitarian basis, it's fair. And the other expert also thinks that government has not considered our national security interests in coming to this agreement. The back and forth, where should we draw the line between these two arguments?
Thank you very much. The foremost issue we need to consider is what kind of refugees are we allowing into the country? And information reaching us indicate clearly that some of the refugees are coming from the Middle East, that's Syria, Iraq, and these other Middle Eastern countries which have undergone some level of conflict in the recent time. The other category is the one from Guantanamo Bay, and we know very well that these have to do with the terrorist activities that occurred back in 2001. And some of these guys were kept there for all this while because they were actually understanding their pedigree to understand whether really they are security threat or not to the United States of America. Yeah. So now that probably, and I'm just guessing, that they've been cleared,
yes,
and therefore an agreement has been reached between our two countries, that's the United States of Ghana, United States of America. And our country, Ghana. Clearly, I believe that some level of inquiry might have been made by our national security apparatus and recognizing that they may not pose any security threat to the country, and therefore deciding to accept them. On the other hand, it may not be clear as to why, or as we are speaking right now, we don't know exactly what goes into the details that go into Ghana and the United States agreeing on this kind of commitment that these refugees will be sent to our country. So there are some issues out there to be explored.
I see. So you would also, perhaps from what you're telling us, you would say that we shouldn't be too quick in fanning this to make it sound like a storm, like one of the security experts says that we're making this look like a storm in a teacup. You think that we should tone down our skepticism, otherwise we will be frightening ourselves unnecessarily?
Well, the first thing is this, that an agreement has been signed between the two countries. But beyond that, do we really know the kind of people we are accepting, the kind of refugees we are accepting? What is their background? Are they genuine people? Or probably they have some terrorist background which we are not very certain on, or which is not clear to us. And I believe that despite the fact that it's an agreement, definitely the country, the government, the national security apparatus must do some level of inquiry to really understand that, yes, the people we are accepting, do not pose any threat to, to our interests, particularly coming in 2-3 years along the line that we have a real problem on our hands. So that is definitely critical.
Right, Dr. Gebe, we're grateful for your time on today's Big Story. Thanks very much. And I must say that the U.S. Embassy Accra has declined comment on the matter following the release of its statement. The press attaché at the embassy, Sarah Heveduzing-Steele, has been unavailable for comments. Meanwhile, the government of Ghana has been speaking on the development with Deputy Communications Minister Felix Kwakye-Fosu telling Joy News all the necessary security measures have been taken to ensure safety of Ghanaians, and that no harm, absolutely no harm, will come to Ghanaians by this decision.
And therefore, the U.S. government has indicated clearly that the individuals they wanted us to take have been cleared of involvement in acts of terrorism that are prejudicial to either the security of the United States or any other country for that matter. Now, ideally, they should have gone to Yemen, like you indicated, but we all know that there's a raging conflict in Yemen, and therefore, it is not conducive to receive them. Subsequent to that, Ghana's ambassador to the United States, Brigadier General Henry Smith, who is a former defense minister and a former army commander, was given direct access to these individuals. He interviewed them in order to corroborate the information given him by the United States government.
Well, but can we trust government on this decision, considering the backlash over the decision so far? Joe Jackson is a political analyst, is joining us. Mr. Jackson, good evening and Happy New Year. It's great to have you again.
Good evening, and it's good. It's good to also be on your program for the first time this year.
We don't have a lot of time, but this is a very thorny one. The issue didn't go before Parliament. The Defense and Interior Committee of Parliament has said that they have not discussed this. The Foreign Affairs Committee also said it has not discussed this. But government is saying all necessary steps were taken to ensure that this decision will bring no harm to Ghanaians. Can we trust government on this?
In truth, we don't have a choice but to trust the government. I don't think that they have gone beyond the bounds of their authority, and I really don't think that these people, even if they may be terrorists or former terrorists, have a grudge against Ghana. Our biggest problem is that we remember that by offering to take them off Guantanamo Bay, we have actually enhanced their freedom and given them a more pleasant place to stay than Guantanamo Bay. Yes. So in this case, I think we should trust the government. There are, I've heard one or two voices and connect the dots and say that in times past, there's been a sense that this government feels that the foreign community who have influence in Ghana are not particularly pro this government. And so one could, if you wanted to stretch the argument, wonder whether is this a move by government to encourage countries like the U.S. to be more receptive to this kind of government. But
Mr. Jackson, sorry to butt in, but is this a politically prudent decision, considering that there are lots of Ghanaians who might have psychological concerns or perhaps be tortured psychologically by just hearing the news or listening or reading the news about these supposed hardcore, look, I mean, I'm using hardcore to describe them because it has been confirmed that they received military training in some Al-Qaeda training camps at the time of their arrest. So regardless of the fact that they've been cleared and they are no longer of security threat to the U.S., should we not be worried, really, that these people are coming to live with us?
Now, here's the issue. Every time you face a risk, you must make an assessment of the risk. And we do that in our daily lives. I mean, each time you cross a road, there's a risk that you may be knocked over by a car which is coming, which you haven't seen. But at the same time, you do cross roads. You look left, you look right, and you look left again, and you say, within as much as I can make within this judgment, it is safe. In this case, I believe that it is quite safe. I mean, there's still a risk, but I don't think it's a risk that we should lose that much sleep over. I think that in this case, we should trust the government.
We should.
And believe that they do have our best interest in heart.
Right.
Maybe there was a political angle in the decision to try and court favor from the U.S. But still, I think that the government principally should be trusted that it has.
Right. Mr. Jackson, I'm afraid that's all time will allow us. I'm grateful for your time on today's big story. So Mr. Jackson is saying, keep your fingers crossed and trust government on this one. I do hope that we don't wake up one morning and we have bombs flying into our country. My name is Stephen Enti, and this has been today's big story. Thanks for joining us on the show. Enjoy the rest of our program.